opened the bobbin case. There was no bobbin inside. Oh my gosh. I know.
Oh, hello everyone. Welcome.
Hi guys.
We are here for the segment and we are telling everyone's quilting horror stories. Dun dun dun. So for the last couple weeks, we've been reaching out to you to hear your quilting horror stories. Hopefully we can learn a little bit from these quilting horror stories so we don't have to experience them on our own, right? That's the hope. So we're going to share a few of those. We've got some videos to share with you as well, but we would love in the comments if you will share your quilting horror stories with us as well. We want to pick a few from the comments to share with our viewers out there. So Courtney,
Yes,
I've heard you've got the quilting horror story of quilting horror stories. So excited to hear this one.
It was a dark and stormy night. It was just me, my machine, and my frame. I had just changed the needle and I was quilting along, not doing so well. Like the tension was off and I was like, what's wrong? And then I was just like, and the needle went through my finger. I know, it was awful. I broke the needle with my finger, probably the bone.
Oh,
yeah. Luckily it didn't go all the way through. It just kind of like went through the side of my finger and went out. You should always put on your needle the right way.
Oh no, so that's what the issue was.
Yes, yes. So you always want your needle, the needle, if you have it from the side, will have like a little bump carved out of it. You want that bump facing you, facing me, if that makes sense.
Yes, this is a silly comparison, but I always think of my needle, it's got like a sweet little pregnant lady bump and we're touching bellies. I know that's such a weird thing. I'm very visual and for whatever reason that helps me, but there are a lot of horror stories of needle placement being incorrect. And something that's interesting with quilting machines is with domestic machines, you can't put it in wrong, right? But with quilting machines, it can happen a lot. Okay, Maddie, I've heard you got a gnarly quilting horror story as well. Let's hear it.
It's a good one. Be ready.
Okay, we're ready.
I worked at the Grace Co. for about 5 months, and I decided I wanted a quilting machine of my own to work on at home. Oh, I'm getting chills.
Sorry, I'm so scared.
And I thought, okay, I needed a place at home so I could do it, so I decided to go to my basement and clean out my brother's old room. And that was a horror side of its own.
I believe it.
The top half of the room was painted blue and the bottom half was black.
Oh.
It was disgusting. So gross. But I decided I'm gonna paint it, I'm gonna clean it. I did all of that work so I could finally get my own unique machine. I decided that I wanted the 19, and I got the 19. It's a good one, it's a good one. And I was like, okay, I have a project. I need to work really hard on this. I need to get it done by this time. And I wanted to use ruler work. I put on my ruler base. I started quilting, and my machine started flopping from side to side.
Oh my God. Oh gosh.
I have tears in my eyes. It's making weird noises. And I go running upstairs to my mom. I broke the machine. And I'm thinking I broke it for sure. So I went in the next day, went and talked to our lovely sewing lab and said, hypothetically, if this were to happen, is it broken? And they just laughed at me and said, no, you put the ruler base on the wrong way, backwards.
That'll do it. Yeah. That'll do it.
And it really ruined it. So, had to start over on the project, but
That's a bummer.
I figured it out.
Well, it had a happy ending.
Yeah.
And luckily, we're really lucky here at the Grace Company because people have their quilting horror stories. And, you know, we have incredible technical support that you can call in and help solve those quilting horror stories. So, again, thank you so much for sharing those, you guys. We have some fantastic submissions that I would love to see. So let's cue that first quilting horror story video.
Hello. So, listen, one time I got a brand new rotary cutter and I was putting it back in the package and it sliced my finger. And I thought, oh, it'll be fine. And I had like a towel around it and I'm like, oh, it's fine, it's fine. And I took the towel off, blood squirted all over my wall. It wasn't fine. In fact, I had to go to the hospital and get some stitches and I still cannot feel this fingertip. Then I cut myself again, same rotary cutter, but no stitches this time and no blood on the quilt, so I was very happy. Side note, I then bought recently a new True Cut rotary cutter from Grace. Guess what? I haven't cut myself yet.
Well, this is my quilting horror story. I started this quilt some time ago and I've put it away right now because I'm kind of disgusted with it. I have to take out a whole bunch of stitching because even though I was very careful and I spray basted it and I tried to get it right, I did the center first, then I did the bottom half, and then I did the top, and then lo and behold, I got to here and found out my spray basting had slipped. And so this edge of the quilt is wrong and I'm going to have to take it out and then I'm going to have to fix it all. Hopefully this won't happen again because the cutie frame is on my wish list.
Oof. That was horrible. Those some, as I was watching the first videos and hearing about the sliced finger, my immediate thought was, man, we need to get her some True Cut. And I'm so glad because it really does. It makes a huge difference. I mean, I've had some really close calls, but since using True Cut, in the clear.
Yeah.
All right.
Magic.
I wanted to tell my quilting horror story. Yes. So, oh man, it just breaks my heart. It's more of a sad story than a quilt. Anyway, we'll get into it. Okay, so once upon a time, I was doing, it was one of my very first quilts I'd ever done using automation, and I was doing pantographs all the way down, off the quilt, all the way down the quilt. And I was in my second zone of my quilt, and I didn't tack down my edges. And, oh no, it goes, and it's, oh my gosh, it's going in quilting to hop onto the quilt top, and it just, the foot just snags the quilt top and just pulls and yanks the whole quilt top through the side, trying to do automation. I clicked the stop as fast as I could, but the damage had been done. It was a real heartbreaker. It was. So I learned a really, really, really valuable lesson. Always, always, always tack down those edges. Are you crying? I know it's a sad one.
Truly awful.
It's a rough one, right? Okay, I want to see, we've got a few comments and stories that are shared here. Maddie, if you could read this story from Noreen.
Oh, I sewed through my finger once. No good. I took the needle out of the machine and my dad pulled the needle out of my finger with a pair of pliers.
Ooh.
I keep my fingers away from the needle now. Way to learn.
Yeah.
Way to learn.
Oof. I actually saw, I don't know if you guys follow the Quilting with Grace Facebook group. There was a lady who shared a picture of her recovering finger after the needle. And there was probably 20 or 30 different groups different ladies who had shared really similar stories. So man, it's a rough one. It is a rough one. All right, let's hear about Susan.
Put my first quilt on the frame. I was so scared to quilt it. I sewed the border, then decided to take the quilt off and ripped the whole thing out. It's still not quilted, and I used the piano keys with a ruler, spent several hours to rip it out.
Oh, I think we've all got a few horror stories that involve our not so good friend, seam ripper. Yikes. Well, I've been told we have a few additional videos that we can watch with some other submissions. So let's watch a few other of our submissions.
I saw that really nice man on the Grace Company's website with a big old stack of UFOs. I thought, so I bought myself a cutie quilter, and I love it. Yay! So I was bringing out all these UFOs that are 15, 20 years old that I just threw away underneath the bed, whatever. So I got one, was prepping it already for my cutie quilter. I was all happy. Bright thread, yada, yada, yada. Print down, iron infused. The borders were wavy. That's why I never finished it. So now I have to go back through and tear all the borders out and re-prep it for my cutie quilter. Which is going to take me quite a while. But note to self, make sure your quilts are ready properly for your whatever quilting method that you decide to do. Long arm, domestic machine, take it and pay it. Make sure it's properly prepared for your next action. Da 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 da.
Hello, my name's Kelly Shaponiak, and I quilt almost all of my own quilts on a regular domestic machine. So one of my horror stories, since I pinned my quilts, I would have issues such as this. And now I have to take it apart so that I can fix that horrible issue.
Oof. Wow. Yeah. Those are rough ones. We have a few more in the comments. I want to share Mary Ann Fox. So her horror story, I ripped out eyelashes on the back of my quilt way too many times. She switched to glide thread and not an eyelash sense. I love it when these horror stories have a happy ending. Me too. I love it when they have a good resolution. All right, let's go to Dina. Dina's horror story. Maddie, will you share that one?
I was working on a friend's t-shirt quilt and she forgot to put interfacing on one block. I had to iron interfacing on the quilt while it was still on the frame.
Oh gosh. Hey, that's pretty innovative though, right?
Yeah.
You make it work. I like
Takes
it.
skill. A lot of skill.
Awesome. Courtney, I've been told you have another horror story.
That was a lie.
No, you don't. Man, she's lucky. Never had another horror story?
Not at all.
Oh man. Okay, let's go to Maddie.
This happened so long ago. Gotta think, what time is it?
2:15.
About 12 hours ago.
Oh, okay.
So long.
It's fresh. It's still fresh.
Still fresh. I am working on making my own computer case.
Oh, that's fun.
And I have quilted it, and it's so nice, and yesterday was just a bad day. I went down into my quilting room. It was dark. I stepped on a pin.
Oh.
And then I go to measure my lovely quilted masterpiece, and it's not long enough to fit my computer. No. So I have to add to the edges. And as I'm adding to the edges, like, this needs to get done. I've been working on it for a while. Go through, put it on my sewing machine, and I start adding it, and my bobbin runs out.
Classic.
So I pull out my bobbin, and apparently the tension's wrong too, so I start messing with the tension, and my bobbin case breaks.
Oh, on your domestic.
On my domestic.
Oof. That's terrible.
And this is all yesterday. Like, this is, you can't make this up.
It's a rough day.
So I'm just like, okay, I gotta get this done. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sew on my quilting machine, okay? Because I'm like, I just need this done.
Oh my gosh. Okay, continue.
So I go and I work on it, and I turn it over, and my tension is crap.
Oh.
Dang it. I keep getting loops. So I'm in tears.
And this is when I text you too.
You were there for moral support, of
Definitely.
course. Of course.
It was so sad. And I went and I had to spend more money on my sewing machine to buy a new bobbin case.
Dang it. That's a doozy. But you know what? You lived to tell the tale. You did it. Oh my goodness. All right, we've got a few more in the comments. Carol, let's look at Carol's. So I thought I measured my batting correctly, quilted the whole quilt using QCT until I got to the last zone and realized that I was 1 inch short on batting. I do piece it, but it was hard because it was only an inch. Oh yeah, that's kind of a tricky add-on at the bottom. I'm glad you're able to make it work though. That's a tough one. All right, let's see. Barbara's got a question. So one of my straps lost the part that the strap goes through in the rod and holds the quilt. Do you carry the piece or another strap? Thanks. Enjoy your different programs that you have. So she's asking a question. Her horror story is she lost one of her straps. Dang it.
Probably on a hoop frame style.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I have to tell a few stories that I've seen. So I love being a part of the Cutie Quilters Facebook group. It's really fun just because, again, they always have people to help solve their own horror stories. One that I see a lot on the Cutie group is it has these really great straps that loop onto your quilt and hold, kind of bungee it together. If you don't properly attach those and loop the elastic through, I've seen a lot of people who've sewn their bungees into their quilts. You got to make sure you do those properly because, man, it's a real bummer when you go to move or take your quilt off and you've got to do some unpicking. So that is a horror story I've unfortunately seen more than once.
Oof.
Okay, I want to share one of mine. I feel like it's kind of a reoccurring theme. I didn't know that quilting and sewing was such a dangerous hobby, but here we go. So this was long ago, back in my younger days, and I was sewing, I was piecing together with Minky. I thought it'd be really fun to do a quilt with Minky. How many of you guys have had an issue quilting or sewing with Minky? Piecing with Minky? It's so soft and cozy, but man, it adds on some fun factors you have to deal with. So there I was, just sewing along, thinking everything was moving along swimmingly. I'm very distractible, right? So I look up, and dun dun dun, there goes my finger through the needle. And of course, my immediate reaction is to yank back as hard as I can. And so I've got a needle going through, and let it be known, I don't do blood or dust or anything of the sort. Yes, I went passed out, just finger or needle still in my finger. And you know, I took a long break from sewing after that. I seriously, I think it was 5 or 6 years before I was like mentally and emotionally ready to sit back down at a sewing machine. But here I am, I'm back. I'm a lot more careful now. So it's a doozy. It's a doozy. I want to hear in the comments, how many of you guys have had a needle? Like you can just say, I shouldn't have to tell your story. How many of you have had a blood-related incident in your quilting career? Let's hear it. Okay, I think we've got, Joyce, been there, done that. I'm sorry, it's not a fun one. Okay, I saw, and her mom too. Man, everybody, goodness gracious. Okay, I think we've got a few more videos. So let's tune in and watch a few videos.
I'm here to tell you a very scary story, a nightmare, in fact. So I had just started quilting, which really was not that long ago. And I decided to take on the task of making all of my siblings, there were 4 of them, quilts for Christmas. Every single one was gonna get their own like throw size quilt, which is just a lot. But I decided to take on. And I thought, you know what my baby brother needs? He needs a white quilt. White. I determined of all the colors that I could have selected that white was the one that would do really well. And it did. It looked really nice. Let me show you. See? So pretty. It's Christmas. You can see the elf in the picture. It looks great. I was very risky. And I put burgundy in the circles and on the sides. This is a free pattern, by the way, if you want it. But I think you know that things took a turn. Let me show you. Do you see? This is not a lighting issue. That is a pink quilt, an irregularly pink quilt, because I washed it. I like the whole crinkle, and I washed it, and that's what happened. Here's an even better picture of that. You can see the dye. So I made a mistake. I got a flannel burgundy backing from an estate sale, and I thought that it was fine, and I didn't pre-wash it. It's not fine, and you shouldn't do that in my book. At least that's the lesson I learned from this. But anyway, I learned an even better lesson because I got to remake this quilt, because I wasn't gonna actually gave him this quilt, but I wasn't gonna give him like a, subpar quilt. So here's what I ended up with. So there, that's what I ended up making. A lot hardier for my brother, a lot more likely to withstand the caliber of love he was likely to give this quilt. So it all worked out. He got both quilts. So we got 2 quilts for Christmas. One of them is one he's not afraid to use because it's already destroyed. And then there's this one which he also uses, which is less likely to be destroyed. So I learned a lot from my very scary giant mistake.
So my horror story starts like this. At the time I had 2 young children, ages probably 2 and 1, and they were napping, and I was going to be going to a baby shower, so I was free motion quilting a quilt when I let my finger go underneath the needle, and the needle actually pierced through my finger and it was stuck. Well, my mother-in-law lived right behind us, so I unscrewed where the needle was so that I could take my finger out, and I ran to her house because first I thought I was going to pass out, but secondly, I needed the needle out. So I went there and I opened the door and she said, "Oh my," and she took the needle out with some pliers, wrapped me up, sent me on my way, and I went back home, and with my finger throbbing like you would not believe, I ended up finishing my very first free motion quilt with the lesson: never take your fingers too close to that needle because it will stay in there. But I have never felt such pain in my entire life.
Hi, my name is Betty Copern. I have a Quinique 15 from the Grace Company, and my horror story actually was my first quilt. I had spoken with many people, and one of them, who had like the cutie, so the kind that clipped on, well, she had said to me, well, when you're doing it, all you do is you load it onto your machine, and then after you do the one pass, you just take it off, move it over, load it back on, and do it again. She didn't realize that I had the kind that rolled. My first quilt was one that I was doing for a friend of mine. She had pieced it, but wasn't doing the quilting part, asked me to do that for her. So I loaded it onto my quilting frame that I have, and it was about a foot or so wider than the maximum that I could do, but I thought, well, that's okay. Apparently I can just move it over later on and do the other part. So it got a bit awkward because the one side was folded over for that last little bit, and it got thicker as it rolled, of course, but it wasn't too bad, and I did okay. Well, then I loaded it on again. Well, now I've got, it's 6 layers of material now rather than only 3. And I thought I was fine, and away I went. Well, of course, initially it's okay because there's not much rolled onto the top, but as you keep on rolling it, it gets really thick at the one side and it starts to skew. So my nice square quilt, good tension for quilting on and everything else, starts to skew forward so that it's sort of getting like this. This is the side I'm quilting. By the time I got to the end, I had the little point at the bottom here. That was the only point that was attached to the frame, and the rest was strung out at these strange angles, and I was semi-panicking and everything else, but I managed to get it all quilted. When I took it off, I wound up taking about 40 meters of quilting out in 40 different places. Some points I was just totally terrified and mortified that I had ruined my friend's quilt, but it worked out in the end. And I also had another quilt that I did just recently, but this is my 6th or 7th one now, so I'm kind of learning how to handle weird situations. And somehow, I don't know who distracted me, but I missed completing quilting on 2 of the squares, and I only realized it when I was about finished my binding. But that time, I put it back on, and I just pinned it for the part that needed requilting, and I took my Quinique and away I went, and I quilted it, and you'd never know that I had missed some of my quilting. So anyways, those are my horror stories.
Oh man, some serious horror stories.
Crazy.
Seriously. Again, I keep saying it, but I love to see that people are using them as a learning experience, right? My horror story, it scared me away. I stopped for a very long time, but you guys are persistent. You powered through. I loved it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got one more horror story. I think 2 more. I want to share one that someone had submitted on our Facebook group, and then one in the comments, and good to go. So, yeah, Maddie, do you want to read that one for us?
Yeah, I just learned a free motion after being a hand quilter since 1993. That's talent just right there. I bought a cutie to use for my smaller projects right now. I have a Baby Lock Dream Quilter Series machine. The cutie has been set up for a few weeks now, and I have read and watched everything possible. I cannot get the tension correct, and it's very disappointing.
Oh man, you know what? That just breaks my heart. I would highly recommend joining that Cutie Quilters Facebook group. A lot of them have those similar machines and can help and support you too. And as always, give us a call at our Grace Company Technical Support Team, and we are so happy to help. Okay, I wanted to share Stacy's story, so let's get that one pulled up. Okay, so this is Stacy Sundgren. I tried to think of a quilting horror story. I had a lot of problems, mistakes, mishap's, and rip-outs over the years. One story doesn't really top another. A lot of them are pretty bad. But I learned a lot of patience and how to figure out how to fix the issues. Also learned a lot of what not to do. Same. Step back, take a deep breath, work the problem. I've never left a project unfinished due to a mess up I made. Sort of a silver lining to a horror story is working them out to have success. Oh, what a feel good. I love that, Stacy. And it's such a great support and just a reminder for all of us out there, because you know what, it's intimidating, right? Especially when we make a mistake. But just remembering that we can work through it. We can figure it out. Okay, so we've got one more video, and then we will have Mark and Jana from the sales team, our counselors, come and join us. So let's watch that final video submission.
Hello, I am Sarah Hockenbrock, and I want to share my most recent quilting horror story. I just finished working on Dear Jen, which is a Jen Kingwell quilt. I've spent a year working on it. I put it on an older wooden Hinterberg frame, if you know what that is, with a old Voyager 17 long arm, mid arm, whatever that is not mine. It's a friend of mine's, but it's in my basement. It's a very persnickety machine. You can do big loop-de-loops, but no micro work. But I'm glad to be able to quilt my own quilts with it. Anyway, I'm about 3/4 of the way done quilting it. And I put a new bobbin in. I heard it click and start again. Somehow the bobbin popped out. And everything got tangled up underneath. The machine would not move from that place. I couldn't get up in there. I finally had to climb up under, snip the threads, but in the process it tore a small piece in my backing. So I was able to fix the backing with some of that little fusible hem tape, stuffing another piece of backing up in there and whatnot. But that was heartbreaking to work a year on a quilt and to have a tear in the backing.